Hello, everyone. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. It is the 2nd of July. It's Tuesday, 2024. Welcome in again, and thank you for joining me today. I've got a couple of older mini PCs, and when I say older, they're only a few months old, but this technology, the evolution of the technology in the mini PCs is moving so quickly. You might see these and go, wow, those seem old. Because that's my initial reaction. And the fact of the matter is, they're not really very old, maybe a year, 18 months at the most. And, well, I'll take it back. This little gray one here, this is a little something special. We'll talk about that in a minute. My thanks to our friend Patrick over at Serve the Home for loaning these mini PCs to us, because he has the ability to get some higher end, more enterprise equipment than we would receive here because, well, quite frankly, that's not our wheelhouse. And it's very kind of him to loan these to us so we can kind of review them and have no obligation to the manufacturer with regards to the fact they even know who we are, right? So we're free to speak our minds, to be honest, and not worry about any repercussions or benefits one way or the other. In fact, you cannot buy either of these as far as I know. But there's a story behind these, and I want to share that story with you because I think it's pretty interesting. And I see a lot of cyclical behavior, cycles, a lot of repetition going around in circles. And I think what we learned from the history of these is more of what we can expect going forward. Just as an example, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because I grow weary of deja vu, where it feels like, Groundhog Day, where I'm living the same day again and again and again. Didn't we see this before? Didn't this happen? Didn't something new come out? Didn't this happen? Didn't something new come out? Didn't this happen? It starts to feel very boring and repetitive and predictable. It takes some of the joy and fun out of it for me. So to help you remove some of the joy and fun that you get out of this, I'm going to make you aware of these behaviors of manufacturers. But the reason I do that is so you can understand when you're making that purchase, if that's something you're going to be happy with in time, or if you're going to have buyer's remorse as little as a year or 18 months into it, right? Because if we're talking about these seeming old, and yet this one is obscenely expensive, in my opinion, would it have been worth it to buy it? So let's talk about it. Welcome in, everybody. Hello to our friend. A shout out to our good friend Buster out there in Scotland. Always deepest gratitude, appreciation for our friend Peter Laycock. And hello to everybody joining us in the chat, all our friends in blue, all of our members. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. Now, we do have other more current mini PCs to review, and that's coming next week or so. However, today I want to talk about some mini PCs I never got a chance to review. And this gray one, a chance almost nobody got a chance to review, because this is a prototype from Intel, and one of the last prototypes before they licensed off the business. Not sold it, licensed off the business to Asus. Now, I'm going to start with this box right here, because there's a story behind this that, well, you can't blame them for trying. This is a company called SimplyNUC. Let me pull up their website on this product, which should be right here. Bear with me just 1 second as I get the window capture up. There it is. Okay, so this is called the Onyx, and it follows the similar form and function of a typical Nook from Intel design. However, the marketing campaign SimplyNUC used on this was that this was like $1,000, whereas other Nooks were about 60%, 70% of that at most. So they really had a price premium set on this from a company I'd never heard of before. And I did a little research, and everything about their company seems very professional. It doesn't seem like an AliExpress type of company where there's bad English or things aren't quite right. This really seemed like they had their act together, and that they were a more professional organization to American cultural standards. They claimed it was more money because it was designed, I think, in Texas. I don't think it was built there. But, you know, Americans earn more money. They have to get paid more. The product is going to sell for more. I believe, if I'm recalling this all correctly, that was the marketing pitch, and that this was just superior, just overall superior compared to other mini PCs on the market. Better quality, better components, higher price. So I wanted to get my hands on one to review it because, you know, I bought into this marketing hype. It sounds great. I don't know who these people are, but they really seem to you know, have a website, and the quality of the website is what I mean to say. And the quality of the device seemed right up there alongside Intel, like they were almost imperceptibly the same. And then I was able to get my hands on one. As I mentioned, our friend Patrick over at Serve the Home loaned it to me. And wow, I'm going to just give you the spoiler right now. This thing's overpriced. Now, I think you couldn't even buy this if you wanted to. I don't think it's available for sale anymore, and it hasn't been out very long. And when you want to look for drivers, right? So if we go to downloads and we want to find the drivers for this thing, SimplyNUC BIOS and drivers, this is a mess. This is a huge mess. So you go, okay, well, I'm looking for the download center. And we go over here to the download center and we have to find, and again, this impressed me with the size of the company. Look at all these products, but there's no rhyme or reason to finding what you're looking for. I guess you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. There's no search. There's no, I mean, this is really simple. This is like something an amateur would create. And then eventually, and remember the price point on this, okay? This is where I expect this to be better at this price point. There's our Onyx right there. This is a 13900H. But here's the deal. The driver pack is just a massive 3.6 gig download of everything in one package, like it's coming from a file sharing site. I can't tell you that it is, but it certainly seems that way. It says BIOS version 1.7. We might need that. I'll grab that. But can you imagine that you have to download a 3.6 gig file, and that'll contain your Windows 10 and 11 drivers, and after you try to install them, there's no setup or installer to just do the whole package of everything. You have to pick and choose which ones you want. Some have setups, some don't. You have to understand how INF files work. This is AliExpress level support right here. Now, for the right price, this is acceptable. I don't have a problem with it at, say, $500, maybe $600. But when you're charging the extra $300 or $400 because you're claiming you're superior, this falls very short of superior. This is just meeting the minimums that any PC manufacturer would provide at a much, much cheaper price point. So you're certainly not getting more for your money in support, at least as far as like self-support. And then on top of that, if we'll hook this thing up, all right, and let's turn it on. It's not a terrible machine. It's not that it's bad. The problem is, in my opinion, it's not much better than if you would have just gone with Ace Magic or, you know, on the higher end, perhaps Minisform or B-Link. But this was several $100s more. Now, granted, it's a 13900. It was, at the time, the flagship chip. But flagships only stay flagships for about 8 months. 8 to 12 months. That's it. That's their entire lifespan of flagship before they're replaced with a new flagship. Flagship is always the most expensive chip you can buy, whether that's Intel or AMD, doesn't matter, even Qualcomm. The fact of the matter is, when you're on the top shelf, you get the highest price. But then when something else goes on the top shelf, whatever was on the top shelf goes down. They don't share the top shelf. So Intel has their top shelf, AMD has their top shelf. Anything that's on the top shelf gets moved to the second shelf, and as such is reduced in price. Because why would you pay the same amount of money, the highest price, for a slower chip when the newer one comes out? Right? Who would do that? So they have no choice. they can price it whatever they want to, but if they want to sell any, they've got to motivate and incentivize the buyers to either pay a little bit more for the better chip, pay a little bit less for last year's flagship. Regardless, we've got a power brick here. This is a standard power brick you'll see a lot with laptops and some of these more powerful Nooks, as you can tell from its physical size. It's got a, it's probably 19 volts, right? 2.5 amp, yeah, 19 volt. It says 6.3 amp on the back with a standard barrel connector. Nothing special. This is an everyday power brick. It's not like SimplyNUC went out and redesigned it. They don't even make that power brick, just like all the other mini PC manufacturers. Let me bring this up to the camera and give you a close-up of it. So you already seen the website. And remember, 13900 is no slouch. We've got, for some reason, a USB 2 and a USB 3. Again, at this price point, I would expect all USB 3. So I feel like they cut you short there. You got your audio jack, your power button, probably a dynamic microphone pinhole there, and maybe a BIOS reset. Maybe. I don't know. Don't care. Nothing on the side. Oh, wait a minute. There is something on the side there. I guess that's a Kensington lock is what that looks like. And then over here, we've got a micro, not a micro. Well, I guess it is. Right? I'd have to look that up to see what size that is. It looks bigger than micro and smaller than standard. It might actually say if I had my glasses on, but I'm not using it. But we can look it up if you're curious. On the bottom, we have some specifications here. Just part number, serial number, MAC address, Wi-Fi MAC. And then on the back, where all the goodies are, we've got a little cable management where you can wrap your cables around this little T connector here. I guess that's worth a couple $100 in their view because, who else does that? Who else charges this price? Then we've got 2 HDMIs. We've got 2 USB 3s back here that support, well, let me turn it this way so we can see it right side up. 20 megabits per second. 2 more, only 2, I would expect. Well, okay, because we have the Type Cs. 2 more Type As, a 2.5 gig Ethernet port. Some sort of option for an add-in device here, which I don't know what that would be, because I don't see that available for sale regardless. That maybe that was something they were potentially going to offer if this sold better. I see a couple of notches right in the lid. Does that mean that lid just pulls up, or do we have to remove some screws? I don't know. Feel like, yeah. No, it wants to open up, but I don't want to force it and break it. Anyway, let me hook it up for you, and I'll show you. It's a good Nook, but it's still a Nook. It's not more than a Nook, and therefore, in my opinion, should not cost more than a Nook should cost of similar specification. And again, this is what prevented me from buying it. It was well outside the budget. And I didn't feel like I was really getting any more for my money than I was getting from other mini PC manufacturers, including other Intel Nooks, quite frankly, at that time, because Intel had just licensed off the Nook line to Asus. And so they had some really good deals on closeouts. And SimplyNUC comes along and says, hey, just like getting Intel. And they're right, it is. Except if you didn't think Intel was expensive enough and you were just looking for a way to spend more money, well, SimplyNUC was here for that reason, as far as I can tell. Because I don't see any other added value, certainly not on the support side of the website or the way the drivers are provided. Let me just turn this on. Let's get switched over to our HDMI input so you can watch what it does here. Okay, power light is on there. Let's switch over. And then there's no signal. Once this thing posts, oh, hold on a second. I did not plug power in, did I? It's probably gonna want power. I thought I saw the light up, but it's a reflection of my studio lights that threw me. So let's go ahead and give this power. It's a standard PC power connector that most desktops use. Now let me hit the power button. I can right there. There it goes. It's definitely lit up that time. And then we'll go over to our HDMI input, and we should see the no signal become the SimplyNUC logo, and then into Windows 11. Now, I had to do a fresh install of Windows 11 on this, and in doing so, it did not carry over any activation, which means that either it was pre-activated with, say, a home version of Windows 11 and I installed the Pro, or the other way around, I'd have to check, or it was never activated to begin with, in which case it just continues to offend me on that price point. Now, here's what's concerning to me. I have downloaded the 3.6 gig drivers because after I installed Windows 11, this should be Windows 11 Pro. Let's just verify before I move on past that. Let's just look at our system properties and see how we're equipped here. So yeah, 13900H, this is the flagship, it was at the time. Windows 11 Pro 23H2. Okay, and we're not activated for some reason. Now, when I go to the device manager, after a reinstall of Windows 11, there was probably 6 or 8 devices that were unrecognized. But after installing or downloading and then installing the 3.6 gigs of drivers, I still have 2 unknown devices that Windows has no idea what they are. And quite honestly, off the top of my head, I have no idea what they are either. So if you look in the downloads folder, you'll see the 3.6 gig file. And should change our view so we can show the extensions. Okay, so this is the file, and then this is the extracted contents of that file. And this is what you get, Windows 10, Windows 11, you get everything. I only need 1, I don't need 3, but too bad, that's the only way they distribute it, just like they do on AliExpress. Okay, it is what it is, right? You click on this and then look at all the stuff you've got. It just seemingly never ends. It's just a bunch of stuff. Which stuff do you need? Good luck. So even just telling this in the device manager, if I say, look, in all of that 3.6 gigs of data I downloaded, of all those drivers, whatever this is, I should just be able to hit update driver and then click browse my computer and then point to that directory, and then it'll auto search through everything through here and automatically locate the right driver for us. But it isn't there. There is no driver for this included in the driver pack. How crazy is that? Okay, so we're just going to keep piling on my issues with this here, and I'm so glad I did not buy this. I mean, I dodged a bullet on this one because I was buying all their marketing that really sold why it was worth spending $200 to $300 more for this compared to equivalent units from other manufacturers. Oh, did I see how much RAM we had? I'm just curious what this, wasn't paying attention. Only 16 gigs of RAM. Okay, that's fine. And then for storage, what do we have? We have Crystal Diskmark running at just a shade above Gen 3. I mean, it's barely Gen 4. I don't know that the RAM and storage were included with the unit that was sent to Patrick. I have no idea. But this is a really small flash drive. We're looking at a 256 gig NVMe, not flash drive, but SSD. It's about as small as you can get them these days. And again, a very expensive price point. I don't know if it came with that drive or if Patrick added that. And if that's the case, that would explain why it has no product key. Maybe those two things go together. So there's some information, admittedly, I don't have. Of course, it's Kingston. Ugh. Okay, that's fine. It doesn't matter. I'm giving it back to Patrick when I'm done with it anyway. Now, where was I? Oh, those devices. One thing I was thinking was a way to maybe find those devices would, because this is an Intel unit, would be to go to the Intel Driver Assistant. I do not use third-party driver utilities. Look, I appreciate, you know what, let me come back here for a second to camera one, because I gotta talk to you guys for a minute. I appreciate that many of you learned how to install drivers using driver utilities years ago. I get it, okay? That was great. And if we were still living in the past, I'd still be recommending that. Just because you learned something doesn't mean that education is valid today working with modern technology. Now, if you're working with a computer and an operating system from back in the day when you learned those tricks, then you're good to go. But if you think that you're working efficiently, optimally, or you're doing it, in my opinion, the right way the first time, you're going to stop doing this old-fashioned stuff to brand new equipment, and you're going to relearn a better, more optimal way that is less risky, it is more efficient, and it'll cost you nothing. That's what I'm trying to teach. But some people, they stubbornly say, this is what I've always done. Yes. And you are no longer learning. You are no longer growing as an individual. You are not expanding your knowledge. You are working harder than you need to work, doing things in a way that was the best way to do that, admittedly, when you learned it, but it is no longer applicable today. Now, it's your choice. If you want to be stuck and say, this is all I'm learning, I'm done. A lot of people do that. They get out of high school, they say, that's it, I am done with my education. Education should be a lifelong thing. It should keep your life interesting and evolving. We often have these weird age milestones. When you turn 16 in the US, you can get a driver's license. When you turn 18, you can get married, join the military. When you're 21, you can buy alcohol. And that's it. There's nothing else after 21. But in fact, we're always growing. And the speed at which we learn is either intentional or unintentional, because you're still going to continue to learn. And anybody who's lived long enough knows what I'm telling you is true. The question is, don't you wish you had learned what you recently learned earlier? Wouldn't it have been beneficial to you to have this information years ago that you just recently acquired, whatever it is? And as long as you hold on to these old ways of doing things, the only one you're hurting is yourself. You are preventing, in my opinion, your evolution as a human being, your development, as well as working harder than you need to work, spending money you don't need to spend, and risking the security of the PC. So the information that I provide to you is provided as a real professional working technician who's trying to earn a profit. I'm trying to make sure my customers are helped quickly, that I don't have to go back for free to fix it, that I get it done right the first time, that it doesn't take me all day, and that there's no consequences. We find out weeks or months down the line that there was some spyware involved or pop-ups or some aggravation that now I'm expected to cover under warranty. Okay, so you can just say I'm full of it. You can continue to stubbornly dig your heels in and continue to do everything the way we did it 10 or 20 years ago. That's fine. It doesn't make any difference in my life. I don't need your approval, and you don't need mine. However, there's also no incentive for me to share this information with you. Like a magician, I can continue to impress people who just have no idea how I do what I do, how I do it so quickly, how I get it done right the first time so consistently, and how I'm able to help so many more people with just being myself with no employees. And I can assure you, I can help more people today using modern technology and techniques than I could have 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 plus years ago when I started. We didn't have remote access. We didn't have the tools that we have today. And a lot of what was offered is now built into Windows, where you don't have to separately download things, let alone pay for it. Drivers is one of those things. Any driver utility is obsolete. They're just a complete and total utter waste of money and time, and they often have consequences, not just financial. You want to use them? Be my guest. So I'm motivated because I want to help people, But if somebody's out in the ocean struggling to swim and I want to help them and they turn my help away, so they drown. I mean, okay, I tried. I'm not going to force helping somebody. They want to turn away the help to their consequence. My conscience is clear. I just want to clear that up before we go any further. So one of the free driver utilities that you can use if you have any Intel components, even if you have an AMD system, but an Intel network card, for example, is the free Intel driver utility or driver assistant. There's no price to it. There's no pop-ups. There's no adware. Let's go visit that with the SimplyNUC here and see if it identifies. I have no idea. I mean, I don't know what that is. There are ways of looking it up. Once again, not using any third-party software. Let's go back to our HDMI input and continue where we were. Now, let's go to the Intel Driver and Support Assistant. This is a very small download. We'll just click Download Now. Now look, if you don't know if you have Intel components on your system, you can still download this and install it. And if it comes up and says there's nothing, then just uninstall it. There's no risk to damaging your machine if you put this on when you don't need it. So we're going to agree to the license agreement, but we do not have to agree to this improvement program. We can decline that if you want to. That's just reporting back anonymously any failures or items where the software didn't work properly, so their engineers get this data, and when they see a bunch of the same error all, showing up around the same time, they can fix it without you having to tell them they need to fix it. They're already aware of it. In fact, they might have already fixed it by the time you discover it. And you just need to download a newer version. So let's go to launch here. That's already downloaded and installed. And we can close these other browser tabs because this is how it runs, is in a browser tab. And it's scanning the system for BIOS updates, wireless drivers, network card drivers, video card drivers, and potentially what those missing items are, which we don't know. It gives you a nice summary of your system here. And this works with a desktop, a laptop. I recommend when you're downloading drivers from a laptop that you get them specifically from the laptop manufacturer. Dell and HP and others have their own utilities, which are far superior for their machines. It's not the only way to do it, but it's the fastest, most efficient way to get it done right the first time consistently. Just get them directly from the manufacturer. When it comes to a unit like this, I went right to SimplyNUC. Always go right to the manufacturer. If it's a motherboard of a system you built yourself, the drivers are typically primarily for the motherboard. Go to the motherboard manufacturer's website, or in the case of Intel, you can use this for utility. And in the case of AMD, you can use the AMD Adrenaline software, which includes their chipset drivers. Now, the video card driver here is pretty big, but all video card drivers are. My internet connection is pretty small. Unfortunately, whatever those other two PCI devices are still remains a mystery, but we still have other creative and imaginative ways of determining what those are without the need for downloading some third-party software that wants to charge you or throw pop-ups your way or spy on you in exchange for the free product. The free product means you're the product. And if you're willy-nilly happy to give away all of your the way you use your computer, the websites you visit, in exchange to get that free, C cleaner or whatever else, trust me, they're paying for it some way, and so are you. It's not free without strings attached in most cases. Now, when I use Crystal Disk Mark and Crystal Disk Info or any portable utility that does not install, then it's not spying on me. But if you have to install something and it's free, there's a reason why you have to install it. And then I would recommend you uninstall it unless you like being spied on. But it's on you. Maybe you like being spied on. Maybe you're an exhibitionist. I don't know. Most people in general don't like being spied on, but they do like free software. And they don't seem to really grasp that free isn't free. There's a price. And if you're not okay with paying that price, don't download the software. Don't even go down that road, because finding your way back might put you right in the weeds. But at least accept responsibility for the decisions you make. If you want to take that risk and you find yourself stuck in a hole, please admit you screwed up and now you're asking for help. You are not a victim. You voluntarily did this to yourself. And if you're watching this video, you were warned and decided to ignore the warning. Sometimes the effects, the consequences are not immediately apparent. It might be 6 months down the road. And you may be forever in a blissful ignorance that that is directly related to what you did 6 months ago. It's like smoking cigarettes. The immediate effects aren't known. It takes sometimes years. And some people die of something else before the cigarettes take over. So there's not always an immediate reaction. There are what we call direct consequences and there are indirect consequences. And indirect consequences are the toughest to explain to a customer. We're not looking to point blame or make anybody feel bad. What I'm trying to do is educate people to say, please stop doing this because it led to the service call. And as a computer technician, that makes me a terrible salesman of running a business. I should encourage people so that they can call me more often and I can charge them to fix every needless voluntary error they're creating on their own systems. And in most cases, when people do this to themselves, there was nothing wrong with the computer. They're just bored. They have nothing else to do. And they think, maybe I can make this great computer even better by clicking and downloading more RAM or any system utility. Any system utility. Complete waste of time and money. There might be one or two few exceptions, but what's coming to mind right now, you don't need any of it. The most reliable computers, and I'm just going to tell you from 30 plus years of experience, the most reliable in the sense that ones that need the fewest service calls are the people who actually use the computer to do work. They have a job to do. They have something they want to accomplish. They're not playing with it like it's a novelty or a toy. If you want to do that, go to Goodwill, go buy a cheap used computer, knock yourself out. But if your computer is a tool, and at the same time you also on the side use it as a toy, there's a great chance that the toy function will damage the tool function. And then you're going to have stress, anxiety, and panic. All for what? Entertainment? How are you entertained now? It's your money and it's your time. There's a better way to learn than to suffer the consequences of something that's going to cause you to freak out when it goes sideways. On the other hand, if your computer is a toy to you, then none of this applies to you because you break your toy, so what? Those aren't the calls I get. I don't get calls from that. I get people who have a machine that they run from home for their business, and then they let their kids play with it at night. And you know how I know that? Because I get the call. I can't run my business today. I don't know. It worked fine yesterday. Why is there Candy Crush on this? Oh, the kids play, Minecraft and Candy Crush on it. No. Look, you want to do that, go right ahead. But we should set you up on a service contract because you're going to be spending a lot of money with me. And I want you to know that when I fix this, the minute you put the kids back on it, you have to understand that's not a warranty issue in those cases. Those kids are causing this. They're curious. They're poking around. They're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. They don't know any better. They're kids. Are you a kid? So why are you still behaving that way if that's what you're doing? There are consequences. You want to keep paying me to keep coming out and undoing the damage? That's fine. That's fine. I'd like to see you save money. I'd like to see you save the stress. Take that same amount of money, use it to buy the kids their own computer. That's all I'm saying. You will save a lot of stress and a lot of time, and we can stop going around in circles. Anyway, these are the kind of stories I can share with you from being in the business. These are actual, real experiences I've seen time and time and time and time again. And it's just like starting over every single time I'm talking to a new customer who's never heard any of this before when you explain it to them, never once has a customer debated the solid argument of why it is not worth risking your business so your kids can play with that critical tool so that they can use it as a toy. Never once has anybody debated the logic behind that. And yet it was not obvious to them until it was explained. So I find that fascinating because the way my mind works, I would not need that explained to me as an adult. As a child, maybe. But as an adult who understands responsibility, that's not something I would want to voluntarily subject myself to. That's all I could say. And I wouldn't need somebody to explain that to me. It would seem obvious. I should not hit myself in the hand with a hammer. Nobody should need to tell me that. But yet, it's pretty common. So there it is. What can you do? Now, let's go back over to our HDMI input here and see how our download's going. It should have downloaded that driver for the graphics card. Let's go over to, let's see, I have to go full screen. Okay, now I can see it the way you guys at home see it. We'll throw this Bluetooth driver on. It's small, and I couldn't really tell you that this makes a big difference in Bluetooth connectivity because, well, quite frankly, I don't really connect things Bluetooth to computers. I don't like the pairing function. I don't like the delays. There's just nothing about Bluetooth I like other than in a car. Or maybe a Bluetooth external speaker. But regardless of that, this should improve the Bluetooth connectivity, security, performance, while installing the latest driver. And this is perfectly safe to do because it's coming from Intel, right? We know the source of this. They're not charging us for it. They're not extorting anything from us. Now it's going to scan again, and now the Bluetooth driver should no longer be available, and only the video card driver should be available now. And in just a minute, we should see that offered to us. We'll get that here. There it is. So this one is a bigger driver, as are all video card drivers. Nothing unique about a video card driver being large and taking a bit longer to install. And now it'll extract the installer so the installer can start. And then we can go through the options on the installer to begin the driver update process. Once again, not having any video card problems, but given that it's an official driver update from the manufacturer, I can't see any harm in putting it on. It should help with prevention. Now, a lot of third-party utilities will sell their product as prevention, but in many cases, they cause problems you would not have had to begin with. But when it's coming from the manufacturer of the motherboard, or it's coming from the manufacturer of the laptop, or it's coming from the manufacturer of the device itself, and it's free from the manufacturer's website, those are the ones and the only ones I recommend you download and install. Period. End of story. If you have some specialty piece of hardware, some specialty sound card, or some other device plugged into your machine, you should only get drivers from that specific device, from that device's manufacturer's website, period, full stop. If you follow these simple steps, you will save money, you will save time, and you will avoid problems. Now, if it ain't broke, you could also just leave it alone. But if you're bored and you're looking for some way to improve your computer, one sure way is to make sure you've got all the latest drivers installed. You may not see any benefit to it. It'll likely be a big waste of time. Once again, this is the Computing Improvement Program. We can decline that, or we can join it. It's up to you. And then I'll just go ahead and install. Remember, the sound card with HDMI carries audio. So modern video cards do have audio processors. They have an audio driver that goes through HDMI. So you don't have to run a separate speaker cable to your monitor anymore like you used to. Both video and audio are carried through HDMI and DisplayPort. One of those changes I've been talking about over the last 10, 20 years. Let me look through the chat while we're waiting here and see if I've missed any questions or comments that are something I want to address. Let's take a look. €1 from our friend Peter joining us from Amsterdam. Ben Laird saying hello from Scotland. And scrolling. Another €1 from Peter. Thank you, Peter. Okay. Pretty quiet in there today. So far, so good. We'll be done with this driver here in just a minute, and then it'll require a reboot. And then we're still stuck trying to figure out what are these two PCI devices. Now, as you can tell, it's not preventing the computer from running. Everything's fine. But there's something there that's there for a reason. So why are we not getting the driver update for those devices included in the driver pack? And what are they? So out of like the 6 or 8 devices that were unknown devices without drivers, or they might have been known, maybe, but there were no drivers for them, that 3.6 gig downloaded about 200 megs of drivers we actually needed. That's it. The other 3.4 gig was just a complete waste of bandwidth and drive space. There was no benefit to us for those. And the fact that that's the only way SimplyNUC packages it is, it's very AliExpress. It's the only way I can explain it. It's just a very cheap way of doing things. And if this unit was selling for, you know, $700, $600 instead of $900 to $1,100, I'd get it. But I don't get it at this price. That just doesn't make sense. And maybe that's the reason why they don't seem to be available anymore, at least not this model. But when you look at SimplyNUC and you see all of the different models they have, and you look at their pricing, and they look just like Intel's, it's very easy to buy into the marketing that there's a reason why they cost more. But then when you own it and you have to live with it, not so much. Not so much difference. Certainly not $200 to $300 in extras. I would rather have the $200 to $300 in my pocket and go with a unit made by somebody else that doesn't charge as much, even if everything else were the same. Right? Even if the website was sort of like, here's a big bucket of drivers. That's the only way we provide it. For the right price point, that's acceptable. But at this price point, I expect better. Jose Lopez with a $1 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Jose. And we'll do the reboot. Now, as far as a computer goes, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with the computer part of this computer. The processor, the RAM, the storage. You know, look, the RAM and storage can be addressed. We can easily open that up and change that out of any mini PC for the most part. There's no innovation or anything any different in that regard. The 13900H is going to run like a 13900H. It's fast. It's going to have a louder fan because it's going to get hotter. If you want a fast CPU, you need more aggressive cooling. But if you want a quiet computer, don't buy a flagship processor from Intel or AMD. Don't do it. You need to, I want to eat donuts. All I want to do is eat donuts, but I don't want to get fat. Okay, you need to sort of pick one or the other, is all I'm trying to say. You have to sacrifice something in order to get the other thing you want. There's an old expression that you can't have your cake and eat it too. I have a problem with that expression because what's the point of having a cake if you're not going to eat it? What other purpose does it serve? So I'm not a fan of that. However, that's the thought that comes to mind when I'm trying to find an analogy to this. But essentially, you want a high-speed internal combustion engine muscle car, but you also want great gas mileage. No, you're going to have one or you're going to have the other. If you want to have a high-performance internal combustion engine, it's going to burn more fuel. The higher performance it is, the hotter it's going to get. and you're going to need more aggressive cooling, right? So if you throw a turbo on it, you're going to need an intercooler to address that additional heat of the turbo itself. Now look, this is the same with computers. It's the same in life in general. If you want to run 6 miles, you're going to get hot and you're going to need to cool down. If you want to walk 6 miles, you still might get hot, but nowhere near as hot. This is a universal truth as in life as we know it. And you should not be surprised when you try to accomplish buying the quote unquote best, highest performing processor and then complain the fan is too loud. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So I just want you to have proper expectations so that you don't have any buyer's remorse and you understand what you're buying and the pros and the cons. Nothing is ever all pros. There were always cons. Whether or not you choose to see them is up to you. Now, when it comes to these PCI devices, we can go under details. Under details. Here, drop this box down. We can look up what the IDs are. So this is telling us, I got to walk up to the screen here to read this. These boxes more or less say the same thing. It's 8086, which usually implies something to do with the processor. Down at the bottom, you see it says CC, the 51E9 and CC. I think, and I'm guessing, I have no idea, I'm guessing, that that's a communications controller. CC, communications controller. That's often when I've seen the CC used in a device manager, but I could be completely wrong. Now, if I hit Control C and copy that, and then we go over to, let's go to Google. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can Google this. One is to copy and paste one of those devices, and this says Intel Serial I/O controller. Now, that's interesting because here's the thing. When it comes to the Intel Serial I/O controller, that is one device that I frequently have to download from a motherboard manufacturer. If you've watched any of my build videos, it's not uncommon to install Windows 11 or even Windows 10 and have a couple of devices that the device manager doesn't know what they are. And I've told you time and time again, you want that Serial I/O controller. Now, because all the Serial I/O controllers from Intel should be the same, in theory, and again, I'm guessing, we're shooting this live, we're unrehearsed, I don't know what's going to happen, I should be able to grab any modern Intel Serial I/O driver from any manufacturer. And specifically, we want the mobile chip version. So there's a couple ways we can do this. We can go to another mini PC manufacturer that provides it on a 13900H, or maybe even Dell or HP, even from a laptop, because this is a laptop chip, right? This kind of knowledge is power. It doesn't make you reliant upon some third-party manufacturer and potentially infecting your machine with spyware, adware, for some free driver software when you've got what you need here. And the knowledge of mankind is all at your fingertips if you could be bothered to look for it. So there's the lazy way, which will have consequences. And then there's the intellectual way, where you're understanding what you're doing versus, well, I click here and then it just works. I don't know why. That's terrible. That's terrible. That's called ritualizing. That's how people come up with rain dances. Well, when we did this dance, it rained. So clearly these two things are related. No, they're not. You're just choosing to see it that way because it's overly simplistic thought. If you want to go through life being simple, enjoy it. I understand that might lead to you being happier. Let the wonder of the world just constantly amaze you. And then when you see how it all works and you see the little man behind the curtain, yeah, you might be a little disheartened, and that's okay. I prefer to know, but maybe some people prefer not to. If that's the case, if you prefer not to, you're on the wrong YouTube channel. All right, so what I want to do is find an Intel Serial I/O driver that is made available from a manufacturer who sells a 13900. Now, we can do this a couple different ways. I can just pick a manufacturer out of my head, knowing they make one, or once again, we have Google. We can search for it and look for a search result coming from a reputable manufacturer. So let me demonstrate how I would do this. Well, not how I would. We're going to actually do it and see what happens. So we'll come back over here and we want, oops, box. Click over here. Okay. Again, nothing's changing on your view. It's just my view I'm changing. It seems confusing to you what I'm talking about. You and I have two different screens. I have a control screen for the studio, and then you have what I'm outputting. So I want to see what you see. Now, we want the Intel serial I/O drivers. And in theory, whether it's for a desktop or a laptop, I think it's the same. And this comes up for Nooks. Now, these are old Nooks. But let's just see what happens if we grab Intel's driver. Now, this doesn't even say it's for Windows 11. So this is not the latest one. There's probably a newer one. This is almost 10 years old. So let me rewind that and try again now that I've seen the details of it. We can add Windows 11 up here. That might help to narrow our search down to be more specific in our results. And we see Lenovo makes one. Lenovo's a reputable manufacturer. It's coming from Lenovo.com. Let's see. Maybe that's all we need. Intel Serial I/O driver. This is from last year. That's acceptable to me. Oh, is it going to make me put a serial number in? Come on now. Still want it anyway. You just get it without having to do that? Yeah, that worked. Now, rid of this box so we can read it. We'll go back to our down. You know what? Let's just close it. Close this. Let's close this. Let's go back to our downloads directory. And we're going to click on this one right here. That's what we just downloaded. Now, if we have the wrong hardware, then this should error out and say, yeah, this doesn't apply to you. It shouldn't cause any harm. That's a very small driver. Did it make any difference? It solved the problem. No third-party software was required in the sense that, oh, you could say Lenovo's a third party, but what I mean is like somebody who only makes drivers, like some driver system utility. All a waste of time and money. Use your brain, use Google, find the solution, save your money, and get it done right the first time. Now, why that driver was not included in that 3.6 gig driver download is unacceptable. The fact that it's a 3.6 gig driver download is unacceptable. But then to be missing a critical driver that the device manager needs that does not come with Windows at this price point, insane. Okay. Now, when it comes to the computer itself, it's a great computer. I have no qualms about the quality or speed, performance, accessibility. Like, I'm not even sure how to get in here, but I'm sure there's probably a couple screws on the bottom. Again, let's just open it up real quick. Metal plate on the bottom. Remember, when you think you're buying a quality mini PC because it's made of all metal, your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are going to be directly impacted because of the metal shielding. So, in my opinion, Intel got it right by having the surrounding plastic and the bottom is metal. Now they do it the other way around. They'll make, like the Geekom A7, A8, are this beautiful piece of metal, like almost very Mac looking. And then the bottom is plastic and the Wi-Fi antenna is attached to the plastic, which means they're at the bottom. And then the metal is acting as shielding, meaning your Wi-Fi range on any metal mini PC, regardless if it's Intel or AMD, is going to suffer as a result of that. And if that doesn't matter to you because you don't need that much range, then again, you'll be happy with your purchase. I'm all about making sure you understand what you're buying so that you're not upset with unrealistic expectations. So I'm going to guess, I don't know why that top has those little spots in there to pull up on it, because it seems like it's really attached by something. And then as far as this bottom plate goes, I think this is where the RAM and storage are typically under the unit, not on top. And you shouldn't do this with the power on the way I'm doing it. Can that still not be out after? Just pull the foot right off of there. So the screws are going into something all metal. We've got a heat sink right here. And then this cable is running to a SATA connector so that you can place a 2.5-inch drive on this lid. Now, normally you can tell if a mini PC will accept a 2.5-inch internal drive. Look at the size difference. You want to guess which one will hold a 2.5-inch and which one likely won't. The thinner it is, the less room there is for that. In my opinion, as a technician, I think you'd be a fool. I think you would be a fool to add more heat to the inside of the computer. There's no fan on this part. So if I flip this up so you can see it, I think it would be extraordinarily unwise. Oops, there's nothing to break in there. I mean, profoundly unwise to add more heat in this spot because there's no fan here. You've got your RAM here already, and you've got an NVMe drive there. The NVMe drive gets so hot that they have added, well, you can see this. They have added a heat sink and thermal tape to help stave off the heat. And now you think it's a good idea to throw a 2.5-inch drive in there and pile on the heat? Listen, if you need more storage and you want your system to run reliably, I cannot stress enough, either buy a bigger NVMe drive or attach your storage through the fast USB ports on this. You're not going to notice any difference in most cases. It's very, very quick. In fact, this NVMe drive is relatively slow. That should be running closer to 7,000 megabytes per second, and we're looking at like 3,900. So it's almost half speed of what it should be. But it's a cheap NVMe drive, and I don't know where that came from. There is no spot for a second NVMe drive, nor is there any way to cool it even if we did have the spot. I think the manufacturer says to the consumer who doesn't know any better, look at how expandable this is, without any thought to the consequence of adding that additional heat. And the fact is, a 2.5-inch SSD is snail pace slow. You're looking at a maximum 550 megabytes per second. So if I'm complaining that the NVMe is only at 4,000 when it should be at 7,000, 550 is a fraction. But yet the heat can impact that 7,000 megabytes per second when it gets hot and slow it down, all because you thought, well, I've got this extra 2.5-inch drive laying around, I might as well use it. Well, look, I'm not saying you shouldn't use it. What I'm saying and what I'm suggesting is you get yourself an $8 cable, which I should have down here. Here we go. And you take your 2.5-inch drive, and instead of putting it in the lid where you're trapping the heat, you buy this $8 cable, you plug it in. You do not have to buy an enclosure. The drive is already in an enclosure. It's the circuit board that's the drive. This is the enclosure. And then plug this into your USB port, and now, there you go. You're done. You're all done. Don't open this up and add that unless you're willing to accept the risks you're taking. And if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. But I just cannot recommend enough as a professional working technician. This is not a good idea. Well, they wouldn't have put it there. Yes, they would have. They absolutely would have. But if it was going to add more heat, they would have. No, that's just not how the industry works. If you want to buy something that causes you harm, they're happy to sell it to you. Until the government puts their foot down and makes a rule against it, look at cigarettes, look at alcohol, look at vaping. In 20, 30 years' time, there might be some changes in the rulings of how safe these things are or whether or not they should even be sold. So it's up to you to take responsibility for what you're buying, and don't assume the manufacturer has your best interest in mind. The only thing they have in mind is separating you from your money. And if they can convince you to buy their product versus their competitors, that is the only goal they have. That's it. And if they can convince you to come back and buy another one, oh, well, that's icing on the cake. Everybody wants that. But you need to have the sale first. So that's the priority. Whatever it takes, get it sold. So there may be some companies that operate with a higher moral or ethical sense, but we're not talking about charities here. Their goal is to separate you from your money. Even the free software that you're downloading, in most cases, is trying to separate you from your money or to extract money from you by harvesting your data and then packaging that up and selling it to another company, right? So you're not even aware you're being utilized like Neo from the Matrix. You're somewhere in a bubble with wires hooked up to you, generating electricity to run a machine. Well, in your mind, you're living this life. I realize that's a bit far-fetched, but the point I'm trying to make is just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean it's not happening. So the fact that these companies do this regularly and routinely should not surprise you when you learn that it's been happening this whole time. Avoidance, if you don't like the idea of that, don't download any free software unless it's verified as being spyware and adware free, which is typically a portable application, meaning one that does not need to be installed. Now, there are always exceptions, but they are the exception, not the rule. So I tend to go for better safe than sorry on my mentality and play it safe and not risk it. You might be a thrill seeker. I'm okay with it. I'm making the assumption you aren't, and I'm making the assumption you want your computer to be as reliable, to perform as good as possible, to not be any louder than necessary, to not spend more than you need to spend, and to not have strings attached that weren't fully disclosed to you at the time of purchase or download. That's all I'm doing. That's it. I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't believe. I'm making an assumption that you're like most of my customers and you don't like the inconvenience of your system not working or not working properly or not being reliable or getting spyware or getting ransomware or having your hard drive fail and having no backup. People generally don't like these things, and I'm making the assumption that you are like the masses. You represent more than likely the attitude that I see more than any other. And if I'm wrong on that, you're watching the wrong channel. I am a practical technician. I'm not here about blowing money to get 100 megahertz more. You know, that's ridiculous. Human beings can't really see that difference between 5.9 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz. That's benchmark software. And how do you even know that benchmark software is giving you accurate information? And what difference does it make in the real world? The benchmark software says I should be full, that this plate of food should fill me up. How would it possibly know how much I can eat? I don't know. I just don't understand. If you have the ability to make these decisions on your own, why do you feel the need to have some automated piece of software synthetically represent the answer that you yourself have the capability of deciding? There's no synthetic feelings. There's no synthetic tastings. There's no synthetic pain. There's no synthetic euphoria. All there is are numbers. And those numbers are somehow being interpreted like a drug, where the human being gets a dopamine release when they see bigger numbers. Even in reality, nothing's changed. Just the information in their brain has changed, and then their vision of reality has been voluntarily altered because they believe the information on the screen to be true. And then that decides or determines whether they're happy or they're sad. Can you imagine living in 1950 and explaining in 70 years 75 years, people are going to adjust how happy or sad they are based on what a screen tells them? That'd be a sci-fi movie that's just so far-fetched and absurd that would never happen. Welcome to 2024. You want to play in that? You want to play that role? You'll do it without me. All right, let me grab a cold Gatorade. Now, I think I've gone off enough on the poor folks over at SimplyNUC. I think they way overcharged for this, and I think it didn't work. I think that you can't buy it anymore because they weren't selling, and if you're not selling, you're not making any money, and if you're not making any money, well, you aren't able to keep running a business, or you have to change what you're selling or change your pricing structure. I don't know. I'm just using my imagination based on my experience running a business. These things seem to add up. I also noticed that, well, it may be plastic on the outside. It is a metal frame inside here. So hopefully they place the Wi-Fi antennas on the outside of this metal frame or at the top of the plastic cover. That'd probably be a good location. In the meantime, what you buy and how you use it is not for me to say. I'm only giving you something to think about in the hopes that you will have the proper expectation of consequences and benefits of your decisions. That's it. I want you to reliably expect the right result from your action. That's all. And as long as we accomplish that, whatever makes you happy, that's all I'm after. Okay, now let's shut this one down and let's talk about the prototype. Prototype is fascinating to me because I've never seen a prototype Nook before. You'd have to be, well, a lot bigger of a channel than me to get one of those. Let me turn that button. Oh, wait. Let's go back over to the HDMI input and let's properly shut this down. Okay, there we go. Then we'll go back over to camera 1. And let's just move all these cables from this Nook over to this one. This will be a 12th gen. This is a 13th gen. There's a keyboard and mouse. Network, HDMI, power. They're going to use the same power cable. Let me bring this up to the camera first and show you why I think this is so neat. I'm geeking out on this one. First of all, you're going to notice the absence of any labels, no serial numbers, no model numbers. This is, shh, no one's allowed to see this kind of stuff. This is the prototype. The prototype is even put together differently. If you hold the computer like this and pull it apart, it opens like no other Nook. Oh, now we have information. Look at that. There is some information on it after all. You ever seen a Nook that opened like that before? And there's the 4 screws to get into it, just like we got into the other Nook there. But you'll notice how much thinner this is. There's no room for a 2.5-inch drive. Nor should there be, if I haven't been clear on that. All right, so let's go ahead and plug it in. Go here. I'm gonna go here. HDMI. And USB keyboard and mouse. I'll plug it in on front just because. Then we'll turn this on. Yeah, there goes power. And back over to our HDMI input, we should see the post screen. There it is. Now, this is a real Intel Nook, one of the last Intel made before licensing it off to ASUS. This was what they were working on. This was very, very close to being a production product. And I think ASUS actually did make this into an actual product. I think they had this concept up through 14th gen. So I think the latest model ASUS offers is based on those prototype designs Intel engineers were working on. In fact, those same Intel engineers probably went to work for ASUS. When Intel sells off an entire division, they likely will lay off the employees that worked in that division. So when Intel sold off their SSD technology, likely the engineering department that worked on the SSD technology got hired by the company they sold it to, SK Hynix. I imagine they were offered the opportunity to work for ASUS to continue doing the same job, just that ASUS will be writing them their paycheck and not Intel, or they could retire or take early leave. That's usually how this happens. So the people likely engineering the Nooks ASUS is designing are likely the same exact people that worked at Intel, whose job was to do that, who otherwise would not have a job. Okay, now, Oystein says SimplyNUC is promoting itself for businesses, probably why they sell for high. Well, that would explain it, Oystein, for sure, because Patrick at Serve the Home is primarily a business-related channel, and that does add up. That makes sense to me. But usually support is better. Businesses don't just pay more, they get more. And in here, an IT department would be cursing if this was the way the drivers were provided. So that part of it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't come full circle in that way. What you get with most business class machines is excellent support. They've fallen short of that. Now here, we've done another clean install of Windows 11. The difference is, if we go in the device manager here, no problems with any of the drivers. Everything we needed was provided. And we didn't have a 3.6 gig download. And we did put on the Intel driver assistant and ran that, and it'll come up and say everything's good. And if we scroll down, we can see information about the unit here, right? We've got an Intel i7 1270p mobile processor with the Iris Xe built-in graphics in the CPU. We've got the Realtek high definition audio, the 2.5 gig Ethernet controller with a Wi-Fi 6E Intel Wi-Fi adapter with Bluetooth. This has 32 gigs of RAM with a Samsung SSD. So much better equipped. But again, I don't know if it was equipped that way from the manufacturer or if Patrick had equipped it himself. I don't know, but it's much better equipped regardless. And if we run over here to Crystal Disk Mark, we can see what kind of performance we're going to get out of that SSD. Also, what size is that SSD? Let's take a look. This looks like a 512 gig, like an OEM Samsung model would be, I guess. Not the consumer stuff that you buy at Newegg or Amazon, but rather Samsung makes an OEM drive sold to manufacturers that's doesn't always say Samsung on it, but you can usually tell from the model number. If you Google it, it'll come up as Samsung. And then in many cases, the Samsung Magician software will recognize it and can be used. So yeah, we're closer to the 7,000 range where we should be. Now, this unit was never available for sale. As far as I know, Intel never finished. They never offered, I could be wrong, but I don't believe Intel offered any 12th gen Nooks that at that time they were sold to ASUS, but I could be mistaken there. I don't recall seeing any, but that doesn't mean, just because I'm not aware of it, it doesn't mean it didn't exist. All right. Let's see. Peter with another €1 contribution. Thank you, Peter. Let me scroll through the chat while we're waiting just to see. Here's the thing. I personally don't want to work any harder than I have to. I don't want to spend any more time on one thing than I need to. And I also don't want to have to come back and do it again or fix it a second time within, days or weeks of me having just done it, because that implies I did not do it correctly. That also implies I won't make any money from that. Since I'm one employee, if I have to go back for warranty work, that's taking away time from work I can charge for. And if I don't take care of the customer, they won't come back again. And if I do that enough, I will not only ruin my reputation, I won't have a business anymore. So it's a good investment for me to stand behind the quality of my work and for me to begrudgingly learn from my mistakes, even if I have to go back 3 and 4 times to get it right. Sometimes some lessons are harder learned, but those lessons are the ones that will likely stay with you for life. The important thing is that you're not holding on to those same lessons 20 years later when the technology is completely different and you're still doing things the way we did it 20 years ago because that's how you learned it and you have failed to keep up in your education. Now, that's your choice, but you may not be aware you're making that choice. But at the end of the day, it is entirely your choice. You can continue learning and continue growing, or just hold on to what you know and think that's never going to change. That's fine. You know, you used to get into a car and you needed to push the gas pedal a couple times to get gas into the bowl of the carburetor. And if you did it too much, you'd flood the car. You don't do that anymore on a modern car. You don't push the gas pedal when you start the car. Keep your foot off the gas pedal. In fact, if you put your foot on the gas pedal, there's a good chance the car will not start. And if you have a push button ignition, you do the exact opposite. You have to put your foot on the brake pedal because if the car were to engage in a forward motion, when you're starting the car, it'll lurch forward. So this is a safety mechanism to ensure that your foot is on the brake. So when the engine starts, if it were in gear or to fall in gear, manual or automatic, that the car doesn't lurch forward because the brake will always override the transmission. Always. So, I mean, unless something's broken with the car. But there have been people whose floor mats get stuck up against the gas pedal and they don't look down at their feet and they have no idea why their car won't start. But, you know, even pumping the brakes, used to be told growing up, when it's raining and you're having difficulty stopping, pump the brakes. Okay, if you have anti-lock braking system, which most cars have, the worst possible thing you can do is pump your brakes. You put your foot down as hard as you can put it down and hold it there. And you'll feel that brake pedal when your ABS kicks in. If you've never felt it, it'll vibrate under your foot. Don't let it go. Hold it down. That's your braking system preventing itself from locking up. It's gripping, and then when the wheels stop turning, when it's going to skid, it lets it go for just a brief moment and grabs it again so the wheels can keep turning so you don't lose steering control of your car. This is the exact opposite of how I was taught to start a car and how I was taught to stop a car. And if I still refuse to learn, I would have a hard time starting and stopping a modern car. So take that for whatever it's worth. All right, we've got really good numbers on this drive. I think I can put the Samsung Magician on here. I didn't put it on here already, did it? Is it hidden? No. Let's grab my flash drive and let's throw it on just to see if it'll recognize. I think it will. Save that. Desktop. Okay. Close that out. Let's run Samsung Magician software. We'll run it right off the flash drive. Get it installed. All right, that'll take just a minute to install. Now, if this comes up and says it doesn't acknowledge or recognize the NVMe drive we've got, it's very easy to uninstall this. There's no negative repercussions of putting it on and taking it off. I think it's going to work fine and provide us with the same benefits the Samsung Magician offers to Samsung drives. Now, the Samsung Magician software will give you basic information on any drive, but no real benefit other than showing you information. the Magician software on a Samsung drive often offers some performance optimizations. So this is pretty interesting that it doesn't quite recognize the drive correctly. You'll see the drive health status is not available, the temperature is not available. So it is not, I am incorrect that we are not getting any firmware update check. So this would be like it was working with a competitor's drive. It just gives you basic information. There's no performance optimization here. And the details are pretty limited. Again, really no different than if this were made by somebody else. So in this case, the Samsung Magician isn't very helpful. And so because it's real software from the manufacturer that is included with the purchase of a drive, it is not spyware. But at the same time, we don't need that loading at startup every single time we start the computer if there's no real benefit to having it. We're just as good to not have it. So let's just take it off. Go to installed apps. We'll look under S for Samsung. There it is. And we'll simply uninstall it. No harm, no fun. Now we know, at least on this model of Samsung drive, there's no benefit to having the Magician. There's no other way I could know that unless I trust what I believe online. And, you know, that kind of depends on the source. Some information where it's a questionable source, somebody on Reddit, some Google result or AI search result, completely don't trust that. When it comes from the manufacturer officially, that's fine. Or if I experience it myself, that's even better. Let's shut this down for a moment, and then we'll take the bottom off of it here and take a look at the inside. So we'll go back over to camera 1. And I'm done with my flash drive, and we'll set that aside. Flip this over, and we'll take that off again. Again, I'm just kind of grabbing it by the sides and pulling that apart. I don't know why they didn't build it that way. I kind of like that. And we'll grab my red driver here and pull the bottom off of it. Oh, let's pull the power cable. Just for a little extra safety. This goes on exactly the same way. We've got little rubber feet underneath the screw. So when you back the screw out, the rubber foot comes out with the screw. I wish everybody did it that way. We've got little hooks here. These little hooks are quite handy because you can use something like sift through my parts tool drawer here. I've got a small flat blade screwdriver in here somewhere. And it doesn't have to be a small flat blade screwdriver. I mean, these needle nose pliers, anything that can get up underneath those bridges and lift that right out. And there's your components. Once again, you can see we've got a little copper heat pipe, heat spreader, and then you've got 2 thermal pads, one bigger than the other. And that implies that there's room for another NVMe drive here that's like a 2260. That's pretty unusual. We've got 2 sticks of RAM. That is DDR4, made by Crucial in there. Our NVMe drive, and then located on many of the mini PCs. And this one's no different. When you take the NVMe drive out, your Wi-Fi card is right there. All of that's upgradable. You would have no justification, in my opinion, to get to the other side. The other side is your CPU that is soldered onto the circuit board and is sealed by machine with thermal compound to the cooler. You will not improve that. You won't. You will only make it worse or the same. If you do the best possible job with the absolute level of detail and precision that a machine has, then you will reapply the thermal compound to no benefit. But likely you will not be as good as the machine because you're a human. In that way, you will not be as precise, and you will likely end up with a machine that runs hotter than when you messed with it. So there's no good reason to get to the other side. If you needed to dust this out, you would simply blow air through the holes. You don't need to open it up. Now, if your CPU fan dies, that's a different story. But in my career, I've had to replace the CPU fan on one Intel Nook. and I had to replace a fan that I broke a wire on one of the minis for him. The MSO1, I busted the wire. That was my bad. These fans are extraordinarily reliable. These aren't the fans from 2005. These are modern bearings, modern designs, and built with the precision of machines that can operate 24/7, never call in sick, and whether they've done their first job or their last job, they are done with absolute precision, better than any human could ever do it. As a result, quality control is through the roof. It is fantastic. And that's not to say you'll never get a bad one, but the likelihood of having a fan go bad on a modern mini PC or laptop is far rarer today than it was 15 or 20 years ago. It was much more common back then. We've evolved. Manufacturing has evolved. The precision involved and the quality of parts is just getting better. Even if they don't make them like they used to, they're making them better. Making them lighter, they're making them cheaper, they're making them faster, and they're making them more reliable. And I can tell you this because that's my job. And if I'm not doing that kind of work anymore to the level that I used to, why do you think that is? And when you think about all the PCs we reviewed on this channel, and every unboxing we've ever done, when do you ever see a product not work out of the box? When? Give me a date and time of a video where I unboxed a product brand new on a live, unrehearsed, unscripted video, and that product did not work. I'm sure there's one or two out there, but I have no idea. It's been years as far as I can recall. Unless there's something I've mentally blocked out, you let me know. So I'm not saying they're failure proof. I'm saying the likelihood of a failure is significantly reduced with modern parts than those parts from 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so all those people that are like, oh, I'm keeping this old machine because it's just built better. It is not. It's built worse. When you had human beings on an assembly line with a soldering iron who were sick, they weren't feeling good, they were emotionally distressed, they were pissed off, the quality of what you bought may vary very much from the quality of the very same thing somebody else bought that was put together by somebody else on a different day. Machines are consistent and precise, and they don't require time off, and everything is always the same every single time. The worst mistake that happens is when the human being loads the parts in backwards and you end up getting a diode put on backwards, right? We've seen a couple of motherboards where that's happened. That machine did everything exactly the way it was supposed to. It was that one human, they had one job. And if they could have automated that with a machine, it would have never happened. But that one job the human being had to do, every once in a while, they load the parts backwards like idiots. If we can remove the humans in production facilities, listen, there's some news that Tesla's going to be announcing regarding how they're going to start building cars. That's going to change the auto industry. And I have a suspicion it's going to be nearly 100% automated, foolproof, faster than any human can do it, with better precision than any human can do it, at a lower cost to making the cars, to faster production of making more cars with a higher profit margin and better quality for the consumer. And once Tesla introduces this, you're going to find all the other car manufacturers are going to replicate it. Remember I said that. It's weeks or months away from being announced. It's going to change the way cars are made. The factory that builds the cars is a machine. And that machine builds the car, which is a machine. So a car factory is a machine that builds machines. That's what it is. And if you can get the humans out of that as much as possible and get the machines to precisely control the quality, the welds, the assembly, the panel gaps, the paint, all of it. And you still need to have humans, but you need far less of them. You don't need 3 shifts. The machines run 24/7. You need skilled workers to maintain and program the machines. Those workers make good money. And they need to be on call because if a machine breaks down, the whole line can be affected by that. So they usually have multiple lines. So at least it doesn't shut down the whole factory like it did back in the old days. And by the old days, I mean the 1980s and prior. Things are getting better. And when I mean better, I mean you're getting more for your money, better quality, certainly a safer work atmosphere when it's machines that get injured. Not like there's a lifetime of a pension involved. This is all should be seen as great news. Nothing bad about any of this. Let me just disconnect this and I'll bring it up to the camera so you can get a close up here. It's so tiny, it's so narrow. But they do have, Intel has had other Nooks of similar dimensions. How cool is it? I cannot say thank you enough for Patrick letting me play with this, because this is, even though it's a prototype, one of the best Nooks I've ever seen. Even the color, everything about it is so novel, so out of the box thinking, you know what I mean? Like it's now, it steps a little bit out of the norm. Now, whether or not that was typical of a prototype, that's the only prototype Nook I've ever seen in real life. To have it in my hands, even though it's a couple years old, it's surreal. It's built really, really well. On the other hand, I very rarely have ever seen a Nook I didn't like. But just when you think you've seen it all, surprise. And of course, that was never available for sale. All right. Any final questions? We're about an hour and a half into today's broadcast. I like to keep these, around under 2 hours. And, it's 115 every day this week. So I am getting hot in the studio much, much earlier. I sure as hell could be okay with wrapping this up a little early. But I'm happy to stick around to answer any questions or concerns you have, if I can. And of course, I can't emphasize enough, the regular members that we have here are also very knowledgeable. So if I don't address your question or provide you with the information for whatever reason, maybe I didn't see it or maybe I don't know, look to our chat room for answers. Even if their answer contradicts mine, you might want to try theirs first. They might know more about that specific topic than I do. What I'm saying is, don't dismiss the quality of information being offered by our chat members. It's up to you to decide, but I would not just blindly dismiss it. I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice. We have a more knowledgeable chat room on average than most YouTube channels. And if you're new here and you don't know that, well, get out of the heat. Yeah, the only way to get out of the heat is to go underground, I think. Let's see. You wants to know my take on Windows 10 compared to Windows 11. Does Windows 11 virtually have everything Windows 10 has? Everything is better. All right? Just the default in your mind, and there's always exceptions, but the default should be anything newer in technology is better. With some exceptions, the norm is that Windows 10 is better than Windows 8, and 8 is better than 7, and 7 is better than Vista, and Vista was better than XP, and XP was better than Millennium, and Millennium was... Do I have to keep going? I understand that sometimes there's an operating system like Millennium or Vista or 8 that people don't like. And the way you know that is how soon it's replaced. So in other words, if Windows 10 or Windows XP have support for over a decade, that means it's a good operating system. But when support ends, so when Microsoft says we're not supporting Windows 10 anymore as of October 14th of next year, so over a year from now, that's because they're confident that Windows 11 has been out long enough that there's no reason to continue supporting Windows 10. It becomes a security risk because the hackers are going to be using the latest operating systems and the latest technology to hack you. And if you don't want to protect yourself because you think you're smarter than everybody else by holding on to the past, it'll be the price you pay, not the price any of us pay. My advice to you is, if you don't like Windows, let's take for example Windows 11. When Windows 10 support ends on October 14th of 2025, and now you're refusing to let it go because you absolutely refuse to accept the benefits of Windows 11, my strongest recommendation to you is to learn Linux or use your phone. Don't use Windows anymore. Because when the support stops for it, every day you run an unsupported operating system, you become an easier target for the bad guys. So that's your choice, but I don't want you to go into this blindly. This isn't a matter of what you like. Microsoft does not care if you like it. Your opinion is worthless to them. So they're not making it for you, and your opinion is irrelevant. But you cannot stubbornly continue to use an unsupported operating system without understanding the consequence of every day you go beyond the end of support. You are being an easier target for the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans to go without punishment or consequence to attack you. And you may not find out about it for months after it happened. Your credit could be compromised, and you won't know that until you apply for credit, which people don't usually do very often. Come to find out, somebody's been using your social security number to get credit or to file an IRS tax refund, and you don't find out till the end of the year because you didn't like Windows 11. Well, that's okay. If you don't like it, don't use it. Don't use it. Use a supported operating system at all times. It doesn't matter if that's iOS or, Mac OS. It doesn't matter if it's Windows or Linux. If it's not supported, stop using it on the internet or unplug from the internet. You can continue to use a Windows 95 computer, or heck, even a Windows 8 computer, unplugged from the internet, you're fine. But many people say, well, if it's unplugged from the internet, what point does it serve? Well, if that's your logic, you need to make sure that you're entering a battlefield with some armor and defense, or stay off the battlefield. Just because you don't see the enemy doesn't mean the sniper doesn't have you in their scope and is ready to take you out. And when you get hit, it's going to take you a while to figure out you've been hit. So for your own safety, you should always use a supported operating system. Windows 10 support is scheduled to end on October 14th of 2025. That is about 16 months, 13, July, August, September, October. It's about 16 months from now. So there's no reason to panic or have anxiety. It's a long way away. That's called anxiety. And what you like it's up to you to decide if you like it. I can't tell you if you like it. You're going to have to try it. And if you don't like it, find something else you do. Best advice I can give you. But they're not going to change it for you. So you got to find something that suits you. If the restaurant, if you go to McDonald's and they don't have anything on the menu that you want, and you want them to make you something special, ain't happening. No, you can order what's on the board or a combination thereof, but within reasonable limits. Otherwise, go eat somewhere else. Just want you to have reasonable expectations. Now, when you're the president of the United States or you're a celebrity, they'll do things for you. They don't do that for the rest of us. Let's see. William Lynn wants to know how to back up Windows on an ARM PC. Does Acronis support Windows on ARM? I haven't seen a Windows-based ARM PC yet, but I would be curious what problem you're having, and then I'd be happy to help you. If you're just creating questions out of your imagination based on nothing more than conjecture and conspiracy, I cannot help you. But if you have an actual real problem that you yourself are experiencing, then I can help you. But with regards to questions based solely on imagination, it's sort of a waste of time. It's a waste of your time and it's a waste of my time. Because unless we have the ability to prove what we're saying, it's all just conjecture and imagination. So if any of you have an actual real problem that you, not a friend, that you yourself are currently dealing with, we can help you. But if your problem is anxiety, if your problem is conjecture, I heard this, I saw this online, is this true? I can't answer those questions unless we have the ability to prove what we're saying is true. Otherwise, how will you be able to define fact from fiction if the source of the information is not willing to provide evidence? Therefore, any sort of anxiety or conjecture is not an efficient use of your energy, nor can you rely on that information as accurate. So that's how I go through life. A lot of people talk, but when it comes to action, very few people. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. There's too much of that on YouTube. There's too much of that on the internet. It's just a lot of BS. It's a lot of clickbait. There's a lot of fear that's completely unreasonable because it generates clicks. Please do not buy into that. You need to give yourself an immunization. And it's done mentally to determine the validity of the information you're reading based on the source and whether or not it's been proven. Otherwise, you might as well just think up stuff all day and keep your mind busy with daydreaming. We used to call that daydreaming. So when I ask you if you have any questions, if there's a misunderstanding about anything I've shown today, if I've not been clear on anything that you would like more clarity on, or if you're dealing with an actual problem right now that we can help you with, we would love to help you. William says he has an ARM PC Surface laptop with a Snapdragon X Plus, and I just want to make an image of the disk. Okay, appreciate that additional information, William. Here's my advice for you. Go to acronis.com and download the free trial of Acronis. Install it on your new PC and let us know. I've never had one visually in front of me. I've never touched one. But my understanding is it emulates the x86. And so any software that runs on x86, any software, it's my understanding, but I have no way to prove it because I don't have one. It's my understanding that any software that runs on x86 will be emulated by the Snapdragon. When it comes to system like disk utilities like Acronis, the only way I can answer your question is to try it. But between the two of us, I don't have one and you do. Acronis is free. So might I ask why you've not downloaded the free trial and tried it? What's holding you back? Wouldn't you rather have the actual experience than ask some guy on YouTube? Because at the end of the day, I could be completely wrong from your experience. So why haven't you? That's my question. Why wouldn't you download the free trial of a reputable product? And then if it was a thought that you were worried about and you're thinking, hey, maybe anybody else might benefit from this, share your experience with us. We would appreciate that for sure. Big Dog says, I'm curious about your thoughts on Chromebooks. Would you suggest one to a user? Certain users for sure would benefit from Chromebooks. People who are curious, children who are going to be click happy and download things. The Chromebooks are pretty well impervious to the viruses and things of that nature for the most part. Now, especially if you want a child using their computer for schoolwork and not for Minecraft, the child's going to be discouraged from using a Chromebook from gaming. Not that they can't do it, it's just not going to be great. On top of that, people who have very simple computer needs and they don't want to deal with all the updates and the confusion and the antivirus and all that stuff. If you're a simple computer user, then a simple Chromebook is all you need. If you're moderate to advanced computer user, then you won't be happy with the limitations on the Chromebook. It's sort of covered in nerf and barriers to prevent you from getting yourself into trouble. And that limits its functionality and customization, but it makes it super reliable. And if everything you're doing is in the cloud anyway, then really all you need is a browser and the ability to have a big enough screen that perhaps your phone doesn't have or a tablet doesn't have, with the keyboard and the touchpad that make it far more usable. So with regards to do I recommend it? To some customers I do, and to some customers I don't. I don't use one myself. I am an advanced user. I think that goes without saying. And I don't use Linux and I don't use Mac products. All of those are either a waste of my time or are too confined to protect me from myself. I like freedom. I like to be able to go out to a dark alley at 2:30 in the morning on a bad side of town if I want to. Apple will not let me do that. Linux, I have to figure out how to tunnel my way there underground, but I can't be bothered. So for me, and the line of work that I'm in, Windows is the most popular operating system in use worldwide. So when I'm looking for work, I don't have to look as hard. The work is everywhere, and that helps sustain my business. If everybody were using Linux, if everybody were using Chromebooks, if everybody were using Mac, guess what I'd be doing? Whatever it took to stay in business. So just because I have certain preferences doesn't mean that a product is superior. It just means that I'm trying to not work any harder than I have to help as many people as I can without having to turn my job into another job to find the job. So that's the logic in it, right? If I'm a specialist auto mechanic who only works on rare cars, I'm probably not going to be very busy in a poor part of town where people don't have any money. And even if I'm in a rich part of town and it's a very rare car I'm working on, I probably might have to just do that on the weekends. I don't know that I could make enough money to pay the bills. I don't know. But I have certainly seen mechanics that specialize in European cars. And I've seen mechanics that specialize with what a lot of the typical American mechanics don't know how to work on. And I know they make more money as a result. Certainly Subaru Mike specializes in Subarus. But Subarus are not expensive cars. If you specialize in Ferraris, you probably could make good money, except you probably don't have very many customers. So you might have to work on more than just Ferrari. Anyway, that's the point. I think if you have a child that is that you really want them to focus on their schoolwork and you're going to buy them a computer for that, you better bet they're going to be playing games on it. So the Chromebook's limitations are going to significantly reduce the enjoyment of those games and variety. Kid won't like it, but you as the adult, And then on top of that, if you were, say, getting a computer from work so you could remote in, it's all going to be online. And a Chromebook is less likely going to break or get a virus or a call to support, because that support call will go to the company's IT department, which costs them money. And Chromebooks are very inexpensive, so to just send you home with one and they don't need it back, usually they don't need it back. Or in a school where the school's handing out laptops to kids, those will almost always universally be Chromebooks for all of these reasons: cost, limitations, etc. So under the right circumstances, I make the right what I believe the right recommendation to meet the budget and expectations of the customer for reliability, performance, usability, and price. No same answer applies to. I have to understand the customer's budget and needs before I could recommend it. But under the right circumstances, absolutely no hesitation in recommending a Chromebook. Circumstances are there. Peter said he worked for Volvo and Alfa Romeo. Whatever happened to Volvo? William Lynn says Acronis Cyber Protect does not work on ARM PCs. Well, there you go. There you go. With the ARM PCs just coming out, there may be some, in particular, system utilities that wouldn't surprise me that the emulation isn't quite there yet. It's a brand new first generation technology, and any first generation product is going to need at least a year to work out the issues, right? So whether we're talking about Windows 11's first year, Windows 10's first year, the 14th gen, well, not 14th gen, but the 15th gen upcoming Intel PCs are a completely new design, and I'm sure they're going to need a year to refine them. So anybody who wants to be first will pay more money and get a product that's not quite done yet. The ARM PCs just aren't quite done yet. However, you give it a year, and things like Adobe photo editing, video editing is very, very slow on an ARM PC because of the emulation. But when the code, and it takes time, the code's got to be rewritten so that it's in the native tongue of ARM, let's say, the native language. Then in theory, it should run just as well, if not better, than an equivalent Intel. Now, the chip just came out, and you have to give companies time. Whether or not Acronis develops and reprogram, pays their developers essentially to rewrite the software for ARM, what's the word I want? Not compliance, but compatibility. That's a massive investment. So let's say you're the owner of Acronis, and let's say rewriting the software you've already got is going to cost you $3 million, $4 million in labor and testing and development costs. What justifies that investment? Sales. How many of these can we sell? The ARM PC just came out. Are they selling well? Too early to tell. Is it worth making a $5 million, and I'm just pulling a number out. It's probably a lot more than 5 million. But is that worth, are you going to recoup your $5 million investment selling to your potential ARM-based customers? Or if every single ARM-based customer bought one, would it still be a loss for you? So you still need a year to determine, are people buying these? Are they going to continue making them? We don't know that yet. So for a lot of applications that will run under emulation, even though they run slower, they work. I don't want to be a first generation customer of any new technology that I'm relying on. So it's fine to get a first generation product to review, but you should know what to expect. When we're looking at Intel's 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th gen, they're all basically the same chip that are being refined and refined and refined. But when AMD came out with their very first Ryzen processor, it was rife with problems. And that first Threadripper generation, problems for over a year that we've witnessed here on the channel. And as they polish it and get it better and better and better, things settle down. And AM5 is not that big of a jump from AM4. But the 15th generation, the next generation of Intel chip, will be completely new. And I do expect there will be some problems. I can't predict what they are, but it's going to have issues. And if you want to be the first customer, if you want to be an early adopter, this is what you should expect. This comes along with being an early adopter. If you don't want the hassle, wait a year for any new product to be matured, right? It's going to eat the grape off the vine, or you're going to let it sit in a barrel. It takes time. So once that time has passed, though, every iteration from that point forward should keep getting better in the sense that it might be faster, cheaper, easily available, more choices. Like your choice of an ARM-based system right now is pretty limited. And there's no real benefit to having it, so far as I can tell, versus an equivalent Intel or AMD chip. There's no performance improvement. At best, it's the same. At the very best, it's the equivalent. And maybe it sells for a little less money, and maybe the battery life's better. Still too early to know all of this. But as a first-time early adopter, I should say, you can share your experience with us. We sure appreciate all the pain and strife you're going through, so we know what to expect if we choose to go down the same path you picked. And if we're okay with that, then we can make our purchase. And if we're not okay with it, we know this wine is not ready to drink yet. It needs to sit in the barrel longer. So we appreciate the update. All right. Well, we're just about at 3 o'clock, and I don't see any other questions. So I guess that's going to wrap it up for today. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me today and hearing me go off on the business side of things that create repairs that are unnecessary, that cause problems that didn't need to be problems because customers want to play with something that's not a toy, or they don't treat it as a toy. Or I should say, it's a very important tool in their life that they rely on, and they start playing with it like it's a novelty or a toy, and then their life is in high stress, high anxiety. I can't afford this. I can't believe this happened. You do believe it. You did it to yourself. And if you want to do that, I'm not telling you not to. I'm saying if you're going to go down that path, know what destination awaits. And if you're not ready for that, do not go down that path. And this is a really good benefit for that risk. Risk-benefit analysis is very simple. Now, if you do find yourself in trouble and you do need some help with a real problem you actually have, you're always welcome to come into our live chat and ask us for assistance. We'd be glad to do what we can to help you. That's just a free thing we do here during our live videos in our live chat room. We enjoy it. And hopefully you just don't keep repeating the same mistakes. Some of us, like me, I like to learn things my way. But if I have to keep relearning the same thing over and over, the problem is me. But once I've learned it once, the hard way, that lesson usually stays with me for life. And I respect that other people learn that way too. But at least know benefit versus risk before you make that choice. Is it worth risking for the benefit you're trying to achieve? My computer works fine. I wonder if I can make it faster. Okay. Is it so slow that it's worth damaging it altogether? Well, I'm not going to damage it. That's what everybody says. You go to a jail and visit all the prisoners. I bet most of them say they weren't going to get caught. Okay, so with that, my thanks to all the members. Thank you for joining us, everyone in the chat room. A shout out to our friend Oystein joining us from Norway with a very generous PayPal contribution yesterday after the end of the show. Thank you so much. Our friend Buster, of course, in Scotland. Our friend Frankie B, watching us out of New York. Let me check the phone now that I realize I have not checked the phone this whole broadcast and see. I always was brought up to be polite and say thank you. So I want to make sure that anybody that has contributed gets acknowledgement for that, and a personal thank you from me, as well as our friends over at Acronis, our friends over at RoboForm, and our friends at VIP CDK Deals offering you 30% off. All have free trials of their software, so you can evaluate it before you buy it, and everything is guaranteed. So it's all peace of mind, and I personally back up anything I promote here on the channel with regards to the, well, and specifically Acronis, RoboForm, VIP CDK Deals. They will take care of you, and you will be happy with your purchase, or within, a 30-day period, you will get your money back or the product will be made right. I think we've had to do that 2, maybe 3 times in, what's it been, 3 years? In many of those cases, the customer mistakenly ordered the wrong thing. And it's very difficult to know when it comes to license keys, whether or not they used it and they're trying to scam the company. So we resolved it, but it's so hard to tell now when the customer is the scammer. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure you're happy, that you're confident, that you're not risking. It's not a gamble if you're going to buy anything I promote. And I encourage you not to take my word or anybody else's word for anything. Evaluate it yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's how you feel that matters, not how I feel. I can tell you it's a value, and you could say it's not. Neither one of us are wrong. One man's trash is another man's treasure. All I can tell you is I actually use these products in my business, and I sought them out. I reached out to them and said, will you make a deal for my viewers? Because I like your product and I promote your product anyway. Could you do something for my viewers? And so they've all agreed, 30% off for you guys. No timeline, okay? It's there whenever you're ready, at least until the end of the year. That's usually when we renew these, if we're going to renew them. And if we were getting any negative feedback in abundance from any of these companies, I wouldn't offer them anymore. It's too harsh on my reputation as a person in business. I'm not your typical YouTube content creator just grabbing money and taking no responsibility. I treat you guys no differently than I treat my actual customers. This is just an extension of my business in that way. Only my customers pay me for my time. You guys get it for free, except for the members who, of course, have their own benefits. I hope they see those as benefits, including on Mondays, we do videos specifically privately for members that are never made public. Every Monday at 1 o'clock Pacific. Then we do public videos every Friday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. And then any other day of the week, like today, as time permits, as my scheduling allows. My thanks, of course, to Mara for taking care of all of the administrative tasks that go on behind the scenes. That's a full-time job. And that frees me up to do more of the on-camera preparation and videos. So with her help, we should be able to keep moving forward at a much more regular pace by dividing that work up. Thank you again for the Super Chat contributions. Just a real quick shout out to Jose Lopez and Peter VZ for their contributions during the broadcast, as well as, oh no, that's it. It's Peter out there in Amsterdam and Jose Lopez. He just contributed $2. Jose did. It says another great video. Right on. And again, our friend Patrick at Serve the Home, if you've not checked out their YouTube channel or website, a lot of great business-related information. And some of that does apply to home users, like, for example, these mini PCs. So check them out, and that'll wrap it up. I'll see you all again very, very soon. And until next time, bye for now.